Welcome, everyone! Before getting into the story, please do not forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Let's go. Emma had always dreamed of living in the countryside. After years of city life, she finally decided to leave the busy streets behind. When she found the old stone house on the edge of a quiet town, she knew it was perfect. The house was big and full of charm. Its walls were covered in ivy, and the windows were framed with thick wooden shutters. The front yard had an overgrown garden with wildflowers, and behind the house, an oak tree stood tall and strong. "This is it," Emma said to herself as she held the keys in her hand. She opened the front door, and the smell of old wood and fresh air greeted her. The floors creaked as she walked in, and dust floated in the sunlight. Despite its age, the house felt warm and welcoming. Emma spent the first day unpacking her things. She put books on shelves, hung her clothes in the closets, and arranged her furniture. She felt happy and free, ready to start a new chapter in her life. In the living room, Emma noticed a small white door in the corner. It was easy to miss, as it was almost hidden behind the fireplace. Curious, she opened it and found a narrow staircase leading up. The steps were steep and made of old wood. They groaned under her feet as she climbed up to the attic. When Emma reached the top, she felt a cool breeze and saw the space filled with boxes, trunks, and old furniture covered in white sheets. Emma decided to explore the attic after finishing her unpacking. She liked the idea of finding treasures from the past. Later that evening, with a flashlight in hand, she returned to the attic. The air was thick with dust, and cobwebs hung in the corners. Emma opened one of the boxes and found old photographs, yellowed with time. They showed people dressed in clothes from decades ago. A young couple stood smiling in one picture, their hands holding each other tightly. As she dug deeper, Emma found a small wooden box tied with a ribbon. Inside were envelopes with neat handwriting on them. The ink was faded, but the name on the first envelope was clear. Clara. Emma carefully opened the letter. It was dated April 15, 1943. The letter began, "My dearest Clara, the days feel longer here without you. The sound of gunfire and the sight of endless fields remind me how far away I am. But in my heart, you are always near." The writer signed the letter as James. Emma's heart softened as she read his words. She could feel the love he had for Clara. It was like stepping into another time. Over the next week, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the letter. She returned to the attic every evening, searching for more. Each box she opened seemed to hold pieces of someone's life-faded postcards, small trinkets, and old books. Finally, she found a bundle of letters tied together with twine. They were all from James to Clara. Emma read them one by one, completely drawn into their story. James wrote about the war, the cold nights, and how much he missed Clara. He described his dreams of coming home to her, of sitting under the oak tree in their backyard. Emma realized that the oak tree he mentioned was the same one behind her house. The connection gave her a strange feeling, as if the house itself held their memories. James's words were so vivid that Emma began imagining Clara, her laughter, her kindness, and the way she might have waited for James to return. One evening, Emma read a letter that made her pause. James wrote, "Clara, you bake the best apple pies in the world. I think about them every time I eat the bland rations they give us here. Your pies are as sweet as your laugh." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She also loved baking apple pies. In fact, she had planned to make one that weekend. It felt like a coincidence, but it made her think. As Emma continued reading, she noticed other similarities. James wrote about Clara's love for painting. Emma had always loved painting too. She had even set up an easel in the living room to paint the view from her window. The letters were beginning to feel personal, almost too personal. It was as if they were describing Emma's life. Determined to learn more, Emma searched deeper into the attic. After hours of moving boxes and opening trunks, she found a leather-bound book. It was a diary. The name Clara was written on the first page. Emma opened it carefully, her hands trembling. The entries were written in the same neat handwriting as the letters. Clara wrote about her days waiting for James. She described her excitement when she received his letters and the sadness she felt when they stopped coming. Emma read for hours. Clara described the house in detail, the creaking floors, the attic filled with old things, and the oak tree where she and James shared their first kiss. It was the same house Emma now called home. One entry caught Emma's attention. It read, "Today, I stood by the window, looking out at the oak tree. I felt as if someone was there, watching over me. James, are you here with me, even now?" Emma felt a chill. It was as if Clara's spirit was still in the house, waiting for James. After reading Clara's diary, strange things began to happen. One night, Emma heard soft footsteps coming from the attic. When she went to check, no one was there. Another time, she smelled roses in the living room, even though there were no flowers in the house. Clara's diary mentioned that roses were her favorite flower. Emma started having vivid dreams. She saw Clara standing by the oak tree, looking out at the horizon. In the dreams, Clara turned to Emma and whispered, "Find him." Emma woke up feeling both frightened and determined. She had to uncover the truth about James and Clara. Emma decided to learn more about the couple. She visited the local library and asked about the history of her house. An old librarian told her the house had belonged to a woman named Clara during the 1940s. She was known for her kindness, the librarian said. She lived here alone for many years. Some say she was waiting for her fiancé, a soldier who never returned from the war. Emma felt a lump in her throat. The story matched what she had read in the letters and diary, but she wanted to know more about James. What had happened to him? Emma began searching through archives and war records. She found a document that listed James as missing in action. His last known location was a village in France. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the letters. They felt unfinished, as if James' story wasn't over. She decided she had to go to France. Standing in her attic, Emma held the letters in her hands. She whispered, "I will find out what happened, Clara. I promise." Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had to find out what happened to James. With Clara's letters and diary packed in her bag, she boarded a plane to France. When she arrived, Emma felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never traveled so far alone before. The village mentioned in James' records was small and peaceful, surrounded by green fields and winding roads. Emma stayed in a little inn and spent her days visiting the local archives. She showed James' letters to the town historian, a kind old man named Monsieur Bernard. "This handwriting," he said, squinting at the letters, "looks familiar. I have seen something like it before in our town's records." Emma's heart raced. "Can you show me?" she asked. Monsieur Bernard led her to a dusty room filled with old books and documents. After searching for hours, he handed Emma a journal. It belonged to a local nurse who had worked in the village during the war. The journal mentioned a young soldier who had been brought to the village hospital in 1944. He was injured and unable to speak clearly. The nurses called him James because of a dog tag found on him. Emma read eagerly, her eyes scanning every word. The journal said James was treated for weeks, but before he could recover, the hospital was bombed. The records ended there. Emma felt a deep sadness. Was James among those who didn't survive? But something inside her told her the story wasn't over yet. Emma visited the site of the old hospital. It was in ruins, covered in moss and wildflowers. As she walked through the remains, she noticed something shiny under a pile of stones. She picked it up. It was a rusted dog tag. The name James Carter was engraved on it. Emma's hands trembled as she held the small piece of metal. "James was here," she whispered. The discovery filled her with both hope and sorrow. She needed to know more. Back at the inn, Emma shared her findings with Monsieur Bernard. He listened carefully and then said, "There's someone in this village who might know more. An old man named Henri often talks about the war. He might remember something." Emma found Henri sitting outside his house, carving a piece of wood. He was in his 90s, but had sharp eyes and a kind smile. When Emma mentioned James, Henri nodded slowly. "Ah, yes," he said. "I remember a soldier by that name. He was hurt badly. We thought he wouldn't make it. But one night, he disappeared. No one knew where he went." Emma was stunned. "He disappeared? How?" Henri shrugged. "Some said he wandered into the forest. Others believed he was taken by locals who wanted to protect him, but no one ever saw him again." Henri's story led Emma to the forest near the village. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches forming a canopy overhead. Emma walked through the woods, searching for any sign of James. As she explored, she came across an old wooden cabin hidden among the trees. The door was slightly open, and inside, the air smelled of wood and earth. Emma's eyes fell on a small table. On it was a stack of papers, yellowed with age. She picked one up and gasped. It was a letter written by James. "Clara, if you ever find this, know that I love you more than anything. I tried to make it back to you, but fate had other plans. I hope you live a full and happy life, even if it's without me." Emma's tears fell as she read the words. It was as if James had left the letter for her to find. Emma returned to the inn with the letter. That night, she had another dream. Clara appeared, standing by the oak tree. This time, she smiled at Emma and said, "Thank you for finding him." When Emma woke up, she felt a strange sense of peace. She looked at Clara's diary and saw something she hadn't noticed before. A faint inscription on the back cover. It read, "For the one who will carry our story forward." Emma realized that she was meant to find the letters. Clara and James' story had led her here for a reason. Emma returned to her house, feeling like she had completed a journey not just for herself, but for Clara and James. She placed the letters and the dog tag in a special box and kept it on her mantle. She began painting again, inspired by everything she had seen and felt. Her favorite painting was of the oak tree behind her house. In her heart, she felt that James and Clara were finally together, watching over her. Months later, Emma decided to write a book about her experience. She called it Letters Across Time. It became a way for her to share the love story that had touched her so deeply. As she wrote the final page, she looked out the window. The oak tree stood tall and strong, its leaves rustling in the breeze. Emma smiled, feeling a connection not just to the past, but to the future as well. And in that moment, she felt Clara and James' love surrounding her, a timeless reminder that some stories are meant to be found and shared.